All right, today we're going to talk about circular flow. Like it says, this is a simplistic version in theory based off of the circular flow theory. The circular flow theory is basically how money flows throughout an economy. If money goes into a box, it has to come out. Since this is a simplistic version, what you see is money goes in and then comes out to the next one and it just flows throughout. These green arrows, okay, on this diagram, they symbolize money and the flow of money throughout the economy. And then, of course, the blue arrows are what's going back for the money from each box. The first sector and everything revolves around in our economy is the households. So when you take a look, okay, with circular flow, it all starts with households and the money that they have. And right here, okay, when they take their money and they spend in the economy, it's called consumer spending. This would be you and I, okay, going to a store, buying a bed, buying a cheeseburger from McDonald's, or any place that we would end up going and spending our money as consumers, okay, in the economy. Now, if you take a look at the arrow coming back, what we get for our consumer spending is consumer products. Now, we all know it could be either consumer product or could be a consumer service. And of course, a service would be like you going to somewhere, spending some money on a massage, and then you'd get that service, okay? Or if you go buy a cheeseburger, you get that product. Now, where we spend our money as consumers, okay, this area is called the product market. Examples of product markets would be Walmart's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Home Depot, any place that us as consumers could go and shop and either get a product or a service. The next sector where the product market would spend their money, this area we basically usually refer to as GDP, which is gross domestic product, total production of goods and services throughout the economy and so on. And that's kind of where we get our measurement of how much GDP there is, okay, going in this area here. But also sometimes we call it gross national product or GNP. Right now we'll just keep it simple and we'll call it GDP. So all this money being spent from the product market to the firms would be called GDP. Now, the product market, like we said, are the stores, the firms. Those would be the factories and places that are actually producing the products in order to get the product to the product market. So, of course, when the product market gives the firms money, what goes back is called new inventory. So new inventories. So if I go buy a TV, like me as a household, I go and I spend my money and I buy a TV, I get the TV. Then the product market, like when we watched the Walmart video, they need to replenish their shelves. So what they would do is they would go ahead and buy it from Sony, Samsung, or any of those places, and they would supply them with a new TV that they could put on their shelves. All right, that would be called the firms. Now the last sector that we're going to deal with is called the factor market. In the intro unit, we went through and we talked about the factors of production. The factor market, that's the place that people would go buy or firms would go buy, okay, the factors of production, from the factor market. So the money being spent here are called factor payments. And that would be the money spent by the firms to go ahead and buy, okay, the land, the labor, the capital, things that would go into producing the products that they could supply to the product market that households would be able to buy. All right. Now, when you take a look, when they spend those factor payments, the money get to the factor market. In return, they get the F of P. And of course, F of P is the factors of production, which would be land, labor, and capital. All right. Now the factor market, okay, The last spot that the money flows throughout the economy, the factor market, basically all this money revolves around or goes around and eventually comes back into households. And how it comes back into households is called national income. So when you take a look at the United States national income, it's basically, in theory, based off this circular flow theory, okay, is from the factor market back to households. Now, of course, there are some people that actually work for firms, work for the product market, and they get paid there. But basically, trying to keep it simple, okay, is that whenever they get paid, it comes from the factor market as labor. And that's, of course, what the factor market gets back in return. So when you take a look at this model, this is a simplistic model. Now what I want to tell you is if the households spend $100 in the product market, that $100 has to come out, okay? And the only way it can come out in this model is through GDP to the firms. So that $100 gets spent there. Then of course the firms take it and they'll spend $100 on factor payments. And then of course that $100 comes right back to who? Households. Now, the only way that this doesn't work is if there's any leakages. So if there's any other sectors that the money could flow out of a box, okay, then of course you would lose some of that $100 and not all the $100 would come back to households. And the more complex model that I'm going to show you in a little bit, okay, that would be an example.